So let's dive into the next album. So Quicksand, the album is Slip from 1993. How does this album come into your life? Do you remember the first time you
Yeah, I
heard
do
this?
remember the first time I heard it because I heard it from a friend. Um, in high school, I had a buddy. We had a buddy, a guy named Jason Buzza, who just knew like all. He was like that guy that knew like the coolest stuff. Like when all your friends were into Poison, he was into Fugazi. Like he was just sort of on. Looking into more of the uncharted territories of what was out there. And yeah, he showed up. I showed up at his buddy's at a buddy's place to jam, and he was like, "Oh, you got to hear this record. You got to hear this record." And he played me the lead track Phaser, and I was like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever heard." I was like 15 maybe when that record came out in 1993. I think it came out in 93. Maybe it was 92. I think I was around 15 when I heard it, and the first thing I did was I went out and tried to find it, which was difficult because it was not everywhere. When I got it, I think I bought 2 copies and I gave it one to Brian Barkwell, who would become the drummer of Vital Sons, for his birthday. And that album at that time circulated around our circle of friends and fellow musicians in the area, and like everybody thought that was the greatest album. And man, Much Music started playing the second single off the record, Freezing Process, on the Power Hour, which is hilarious because if you listen to it, it's not a metal album. It's just, I don't know what to call it. And like, I remember someone making fun of me and calling me a sellout because I liked Freezing Process, and this is like an obscure record that, nobody really knows about. But there's a song on that album called Dine Alone, which people do understand what that means now because Dine Alone Records got their name, I believe, from that song. And Walter was involved with those guys for a while. But man, that's another record that I can listen to front to back over and over again, man. Like every song.
So this album is like a landmark album for the genre of post-hardcore. And when I think of
Yeah.
post-hardcore, I think of Alexisonfire. And when
Yeah.
I look at this album and I see the song Dine Alone, I'm thinking, okay, Dine Alone Records. So when I go and check, it says on the website, the name is drawn from the song Dine Alone by the post-hardcore band Quicksand. So Dine Alone Records is named after the song from Quicksand. And again, groundbreaking post-hardcore album that inspires the name of the label, which goes on to have Alexisonfire, which helps popularize the post-hardcore genre. So it's kind of all one thing, one lineage going through there.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Walter from Quicksand is actually in a City in Color video.
No way.
I think he's in the video for Save Your Scissors. At least I want him to be. But I think the reach of this album is much further than post-hardcore. I think it cast a huge net across modern rock because this was the album that all the alt rock and modern rock guys that wanted to be like heavy every once in a while would, spin this one up and be like, oh, dude, like, check this out. This song's called Head to Wall. Like, listen to it. It's so, and those songs are like, they're so aggressive, but elegant and focused. Like, they're so focused. There's like not a wasted note, not a wasted drum beat, nothing, And of course, Sergio Vega, the bass player of Quicksand, went on to become the bass player of Deftones after Chi Cheng passed and was played bass on, 8 or 9 Deftones records before he ended up leaving the band. But they only put out like 3 records. There's only before they broke up the first time. This is another band that has since reformed and released 3 more really awesome records. But the first 3 Quicksand albums, the first one being an EP, this one, Slip, and the record after this, Manic Compression, are all fantastic records. And, like, they're just so focused. Like, they're not a note out of place. It's angry without being mad, but aggressive without being overbearing. There's an elegance to the whole thing. It's like surgical, at least in my mind.
One thing that brings the Dine Alone Records thing full circle is Quicksand puts out this album. They inspire Joel Carriere, that goes on to start Dine Alone Records. Dine Alone names their label after the song from this album. And then in 2012, Dine Alone Records released the reissue of this album on vinyl.
Really? Oh my
which
god!
ties like everything
Yeah.
together. You know, Dine Alone goes on to be so successful as a label, and then they get to reissue the album that inspired the name of the label. So
that's fantastic.
Sweet. Yeah, and again, to me, the bass stands out on this album. So there's the 4 singles: Dine Alone, Phaser, Omission, Freezing Process. On 2 of the singles, the bass starts the song. Like, it's this very start of the song is cool bass riffs. And then in 2 of the other singles, after the choruses, there's breakdowns where it's essentially just bass. So it's like bass is like a lead instrument in a lot of these songs.
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, if we can get into like technique and nonce, that kind of stuff, you know, Sergio Vega plays bass like it's a lead instrument. You know, like, again, there's a lot of chording being done. There's a lot of small pocket riffs, and you know, he's writing new riffs that aren't anywhere else in the song. You know, sometimes, especially with guitar driven rock, you know, there's a riff that everybody plays, right? Like the bass plays it and the guitar plays it, and you know, the drums are syncing up or syncing to it. You know, with the Quicksand record, with what Sergio was doing back then, is, you know, like throwing things in that no one else in the ensemble is doing at the time, which I always thought was really cool. And he had such a cool, interesting, distinct tone. Yeah, I probably, again, there's not much I could say about this record that isn't just like effusive enthusiasm, because it means so much to me. It's a record that means so much to me. Like, I think, you know, when I first started dating the woman that would become my wife, it was like the first record I played for her. Like, oh, you gotta listen to this. You gotta listen to this. Just like, what the hell is this? You know, she ended up being just as big of a fan as I was in the end. But
that's how you knew she was the one. If she liked
pretty much,
she
liked cool music and she could tolerate me.
Yeah. Another way that this was groundbreaking is when Quicksand signed to Polydor in 1992. It was the first post-hardcore band to sign to a major label, so it kind of opened the door to what was possible as a band that had a harder sound.
Yeah, well, I think if you like any kind of hard music, from, you know, metal to post-hardcore, you know, screamo, prog rock, prog metal, this album, you can sit with this record and listen to it and find something about it that you like.
So as we wrap up on this album, and then we move into your third favorite album here, I have 2 quick reviews and then some top 10 lists that it's on. So All Music says Quicksand's music is about powerful anger, and the persistent bludgeoning of Slip delivers the goods. BBC described the record as a 40-minute masterclass in post-hardcore perfection. And then it was on 3 different top 10 lists. So Metal Hammer has it in the top 10 essential post-hardcore albums. Treble has it in the 10 essential 90s post-hardcore albums. And the album is included in Decibel Magazine's Hall of Fame. So that's everything I have for that album.
Well, the important thing to note is they have since reformed and put out 3 amazing albums, starting with one called Interiors. And it's almost like they picked up where they left off. Unfortunately, Tom Capone, the lead guitarist who played on the first 2 records, is no longer in the band, but everybody else is. And, you know, Walter sounds as disappointed in society and angry as he ever did, without being overbearing. And like, they're just so awesome, man. Like, yeah, go listen to the record, internet.